So, now I've started to change my path, right? I'm starting to kind of figure out, I'm like, okay, I get it. And then I had some key things that have happened to me throughout that process, right? And I need to sit down. Is that cool? All right. I'm tired of walking. I'm gonna try and move as much as possible, see if I can get these camera guys to hiccup. Anyway, so I'm starting to have like little key things that happen to me along the way that are really helping me understand my purpose and why I make photos, right? And so this was one of them. So when I was at the Columbus Dispatch in Columbus, Ohio, I got there and they were like, and they're like, hey, we got something for you to shoot already. I'm like, awesome, let's go. And so I went and I shot a Pee Wee football game, right? So I'm there, I'm shooting some photos, making some fun stuff. Got this. And then I shot this photo of just this team won. And that's the grandfather picked up his grandson and just ran. I had a 300, 2.8, shot it simply, not an exciting picture. It's just got a great moment, right? Well, years later, I got an email on our contact form on our website, and it was a girl asking, she says, hey, there's a photo that you shot in 1997, and I want to see if I can get a copy of it. And I'm like, well, could you narrow that down a little bit? And she told me, and I knew exactly what she's talking about, and she says, well, the photo was lost in a fire, and I'm trying to get a copy of it for my fiance. So her fiance is in the photo, right? And so he had this photo cut out of the newspaper and stuck in his room, I'm imagining, for years, and it was lost in a fire. And she said that literally, because his grandfather has passed away now, that photo, that moment, is his favorite moment in his entire existence with his grandfather. That's it, that one photo. And I have a record of it, right, to remember. You know what I mean? And that's like massive to me, And I didn't know it at the time. I just shot a photo of somebody carrying their grandson, But fortunately I had a copy of it and I sent it to her. And it's like, I started to realize that, pictures can make a difference, and I can make a difference with my photos. And then finally I came to my why, my kind of aha moment. And so this is my parents' wedding photos, right? So I looked at my parents' wedding photos about three or 4 years ago, and I was like, why haven't I seen these before? Which is kind of weird. But I'm looking through them, and I'm like, oh, okay, all right, well, I get it. This is what they looked like. Mom was really pretty. I kind of look like Dad, right? Which he had a lot of hair then, but he's going to kill me for that. But it was helping me start to kind of find my why, right? And the formals would show up, and I was looking at the formals, and it was like all that did for me was, like that's what Mom looked like, or that's what Nanny looked like, or Uncle Ron was wearing a funny suit, right? But then I came to some moments, right? And this moment is amazing to me, right? And again, I wish I could scramble my parents' internet right now so they won't watch this, but because I'm going to throw them under the bus. But it's really funny; they can handle it. So this is my mom throwing the bouquet at the end of the night. So back then they threw it at the very last thing, right? And I'm like, this is an awesome moment. I think this photographer nailed it, right? One frame probably. One, the whole story in one. But I'm like, hey, whose hand is that? Whose hand are you holding on to? And she's like, well, that's your dad's hand. And I might be embellishing this story, but I'm pretty sure this is what I heard. And she says, I wanted to throw the bouquet off of a retaining wall, but I was a little too loopy to do it on my own. So your dad had to hold my hand, which I find to be amazing story, right? And then I'm like, well, whose car is that? See that car over there? That's Aunt Mary Jo's car, and Aunt Mary Jo is right over there hiding behind the plant, right? And we actually, that was like around the year that we lost Aunt Mary Jo a year or two ago to cancer. And now it's like that photo has a lot of different meaning, of course. And Aunt Mary Jo drove my parents to the airport, and they were late, and they went right up to the airplane, got on, and then they were like, my dad's like, drinks for everybody, all this kind of stuff. And I just think that's an amazing story. And what that moment photo did was it not only told me what they were like back then, but it made me ask questions, which then made me understand them more. Does that make sense, right? And I finally realized it. I'm like, that's my why. My why is the photos I make at a wedding, they are not for the bride and groom, right? People are like, well, who else are they for, right? They are for people that don't exist yet. I thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly believe that because I wasn't there. And now those photos are explaining to me who people are and were and the stories of life back then. And that's why I do what I do, right? And so we're going to dive into that, quite a bit this today and these next 3 days. So anyway, I get into weddings and I'm starting to figure out my why, right? This is a story I shot. Bride Kara, her and Andy were getting married and up in Iowa, and 2 weeks before her wedding, her dad was in a tragic farm accident, and they lost him the week of the wedding. And they decided to put everything off for a year to try and get everybody in the right place to have the wedding, which is impossible. But the other photographer that couldn't do the one that was already hired that couldn't do the wedding, he couldn't do it or something like that. I don't know exactly what happened, but she found me, and I was like, this story has to be told. Like we can't just cover it up. It's the elephant in the room. We can't just make it look like a happy, joyous wedding. And this is one of my first examples of this really starting to hit me of how I should document weddings. And my dear friend Brooks Whittington, he's out of Dallas, Texas. He's an amazing wedding photojournalist and a huge influence on me. Him and I went up and shot this together, and it was a crazy day. It was from her friends, and the story was not just about Dad being gone, but it was about the support of her friends and family, getting them through this. I love this photo. This is her looking at herself in the mirror before she leaves for the ceremony, and she never once fixed anything. If I can remember, she just sat there. And I just felt like she was thinking of her dad, so I just quietly made a photo that could remind her of that, maybe, and the light coming in. And then somebody once told me, yeah, look how that seat is empty and the lamp is turned off. It makes it feel like somebody's missing. And I'm like, that was no intention of mine. But it's just interesting how people can respond and react to photos. So anyway, Mom taking her to the ceremony, Dad on her bouquet. I worked really hard to get that photo. Her waiting to go down the aisle. And you can see the emotion. You can see what it feels like. Her older brother walked her down the aisle with a candle for Dad. And then they all lit the candle together as a family. Balloons released after the ceremony. On our way back to the house, because we had a break, we had to do portraits, and I'm like, I'm not going to drag you around Iowa doing portraits forever. So I said, just go to your house. That's on their way back up to the house. That's the wheat that her mom said paid for the wedding. Her dad on the mailbox. I waited a long time for this to come together. It says, if tears could build a stairway and memories a lane, I'd walk up to heaven and bring you home again. It's like trying to show what this means and show what this man meant to people is really hard when he's not there. Lots of emotion at this wedding. Younger brother did the father-daughter dance. And I just shot it, right? And that's when I'm starting to get traction, and starting to really get a feel for what I'm going to be doing, as a wedding photographer.